It wasn't easy being a member of the South African exile community during apartheid. One of the challenges was trying to survive in two worlds. That's what many young South Africans who had grown up overseas found when they finally returned home. And with the country celebrating Heritage Day today, we meet two former exiles about their journey to regain their cultural identity.
Busisiwe Ntintili was just 3 years old when her parents left South Africa in 1980, going into exile in the United States. Her family would return in the early 90s while she stayed behind to study. Busisiwe finally came home in 1999, aged 22. Now in her late 30s, she's carved a place for herself in the local TV industry as a renowned filmmaker. While in exile, her parents instilled a sense of South Africa as home, but adapting to life here hasn't been easy.
So when we came back, I could understand Xhosa, but I couldn't speak it fluently. I had to learn how to get a thick skin, because otherwise, yeah, it could be like daunting, especially when you're excited to come home, because like I said, growing up there and having this feeling, we were always taught we're South Africans, never forget it. So when I came home, I was excited and like, yeah, I'm finally gonna be home, and then to have that kind of reaction can be disappointing.
There was the world in our house, where we ate samp and boerewors, and my mother made magwenya and fried fish, and my grandparents would send us like Sotho blankets, and my parents spoke Sotho to each other, so we also got some of the language. But then we were also immersed in American culture.
Lebo Mashile, like Busisiwe, is also an exiled child, and like many exiles, the loss of cultural identity was hardest to overcome.
Of course, there is a sense of dislocation. I mean, of course, I would sell my left hand to be able to read and write my mother tongue. There's so many things that I know that I'll never get back.
Professor Melissa Steyn has researched the phenomenon. She's found that cultural expectations made it more difficult for women to reintegrate.
For the women, they had experienced quite a lot more freedom outside of the country, and found that when they came back into the cultural contexts here, that there were definite expectations of how they would fit into their families and extended families.
Both Lebo and Busisiwe immersed themselves in the culture, finding solace in music.
Through work and stuff, I met people and made friends, and that also helped with culture, because I met Sotho friends and Xhosa and Venda and whatever, and I think through those friendships it helped to, it was like a fast track school of like just learning about South African pop culture and who's this musician and who's that,
For Black South Africans, cultural identity is an important part of their heritage. Professor Steyn also found that some exiles were unable to fit in when they returned.
When you come back in, because you've changed, because you've had all of those other experiences outside of your home country, and then when you come back in, people expect you not to have changed. They expect you to fit back in just exactly as if you'd never left.
But for these two young women, despite the challenges, this is where they want to be.
There's no other place, Every day, this place is like, what are your class politics? What are your race politics? What are your gender politics? How do you feel about nationalism? How do you feel about Pan-Africanism? How do you feel about this? Well, how do you feel about that? Well, let me throw this spanner into your works. And it's relentless. But, I mean, for a creative person, for somebody who's passionate about growth, it's absolutely necessary.
I think for me what really excites me and what keeps me here and what makes me stay here, even though I might complain sometimes, is the younger generation. There's a confidence there, and there's also like a sense of like wanting to know about their heritage and wanting to know about where do they come from and who are their heroes, and you know, who paved the way from them, and that gives them that confidence to be like, you know what, I can conquer the world.
I am an African. And in the knowledge that none dares contest that assertion, I shall claim that I'm an African. Today, it feels good to be an African.
In other news now, the